At some point in the desert, you don't get lost. You get taken. In 1994, a trained endurance athlete entered the Sahara during a race and walked out more than a week later in a completely different place. This isn't a story about panic. It's a story about what happens when the desert decides you're on your own. The Marathon des Sables, the Marathon of the Sands, is one of the most grueling foot races on Earth. Held annually in the Sahara Desert of southern Morocco, it covers roughly 250 kilometers over 6 days. Participants carry everything they need on their backs: food, water, sleeping gear. It's a test of endurance, self-sufficiency, and discipline. The race is designed to push people to the edge, but not past it. For experienced athletes like Mauro Prosperi, an Italian police officer and seasoned pentathlete, the system was a safety net. There were checkpoints, flares, and medical teams. The rules were clear. Preparation was everything. He was a highly conditioned runner, entering a structured environment where risk was measured and managed. It was a brutal challenge, but one with a map. In 1994, Prosperi stood at the starting line, confident and prepared. He was there to compete, to push his limits within the known boundaries of the event. But the desert doesn't always respect boundaries. On the 4th day of the race, the sky turned yellow. A sandstorm, a haboob, descended with sudden, violent force. It wasn't just wind. It was a moving lull of sand that swallowed the landscape whole. Visibility dropped to zero. The air grew thick and abrasive, stinging his eyes and skin. In a storm like this, the rules say to stop. Wait for it to pass. Hunker down and conserve energy. But the logic of a racer is to move forward. Stopping feels like quitting. Moving feels like control. Surrounded by blinding chaos, the impulse to keep going, to push through the temporary blindness, was overwhelming. For 8 hours, the storm raged. And through it all, Mauro Prosperi kept moving, believing he was holding his course, guided by instinct and experience. He was alone, but he wasn't lost. Not yet. Then, the wind died down. The sand settled. Silence returned. When Prosperi looked around, the world he knew was gone. The markers that had guided the racers were buried. The footprints of the competitors ahead of him were erased. There was only sand, sky, and an unnerving quiet. This is the moment most people panic. The sudden, crushing realization of being utterly alone. But he didn't. And that's what makes this worse. He was a professional, trained to manage crisis. He assessed his situation. He had a compass, a map, and a limited supply of food and water. He believed he was only slightly off course. His training told him what to do. Stay calm, orient yourself, and move toward the nearest checkpoint. He picked a direction and started walking. The desert is a landscape of repetition. One dune looks like the next. The horizon is a shimmering, deceptive line that never gets closer. In this environment, confidence becomes a liability. Prosperi was certain he was heading back towards the race route, correcting his course. But the Sahara's scale warps perception. The sun, a brutal and unreliable guide, blazed overhead. Each logical decision, each calculated step, was based on an initial error he couldn't see. And so, every decision made sense. Every decision took him deeper into the emptiness. He was walking away from the race, away from rescue, away from everything. The desert wasn't fighting him. It was simply absorbing him. His supplies began to dwindle. A sip of water became a calculated risk. A small bite of food was a resource spent forever. Time started to collapse. The brutal rhythm of the desert took over. The days were spent managing heat, seeking any sliver of shade cast by a rock or a low rise of sand. The hours blurred into a single exhausting effort to keep moving. Survival was a battle against the sun, but the night brought no relief. As the temperature plummeted, the desert cold seeped into his bones. He would huddle in the sand for warmth, shivering, unable to rest. Night didn't bring sleep. It brought waiting for the sun to rise, only to begin the fight against its heat all over again. Day 1 bled into day 2, then day 3. The race was a distant memory. The world had shrunk to this single desperate journey. After days of walking, he saw something on the horizon. Not a mirage. It was a structure. A small, abandoned Muslim shrine. A marabouth, built of stone and mud. It was a sign of human presence, however old. Finding it offered a profound momentary relief. It provided shelter from the relentless sun and the freezing nights. It was a place to stop, but it was not safety. It was not rescue. Staying meant conserving energy, but it also meant waiting for a rescue that might never come. Leaving meant gambling his remaining strength against the vastness of the desert. Finding the shrine didn't save him. It just slowed the clock. Inside the shrine, he found a colony of bats. He was now far beyond the point of conventional survival. Dehydration was setting in. His body was failing. The choices he made now were born of pure necessity. At this point, survival wasn't about comfort. It was about extending time. He knew that the search parties would be looking for him. Help was out there. He just had to last long enough for them to find him. His hope was fixed on the sky. He used a small mirror to try and signal any passing aircraft. And then he heard it. The faint, distant hum of an engine. One, then 2 search planes flew overhead. He scrambled out, waving his arms, flashing his mirror. A tiny speck of life in an ocean of sand. They were so close, but they flew on. They never saw him. He watched until the sound faded back into silence. Being unseen is worse than being lost. It's a confirmation of your own insignificance. The hope that had surged through him evaporated, leaving a deeper, colder emptiness. For a man who had pushed his body to its absolute limit, this was the breaking point. The feeling of abandonment was total. He had done everything right. He had stayed calm. He had rationed his supplies. He had signaled for help. And it wasn't enough. In the quiet solitude of the shrine, he wrote a farewell note to his wife, preparing for the end. But something inside him, the same stubborn will that drove him to run marathons, refused to quit. He could not die here. After 2 days, he made a decision. Stopping meant waiting for something that wasn't coming. He had to move. He left the shrine and the note behind, and once again started walking. He followed the direction the planes had come from, a last desperate gamble. He walked on, his body emaciated, his pace slow and shuffling, driven by a flicker of instinct that defied all logic. After 9 days and nearly 300 kilometers off course, stumbling through rocky terrain, he saw a goat, and then a young girl. He had wandered into Algeria. The girl, a Tuareg nomad, ran away, scared by his appearance, but she returned with her family. They gave him goat's milk and water, saving his life. They brought him to a military outpost, where his identity was finally confirmed. When he was found, Mauro Prosperi had lost over 15 kilograms. His body was shutting down. His survival was a medical improbability. But there was no dramatic, triumphant rescue. It was a quiet, gentle return to the world of the living, offered by the people who call the desert home. His story became a legend of endurance. But what is endurance? It isn't just physical strength. It's the capacity to withstand indifference. The Sahara didn't test him. It ignored him. It is a place without malice, without intent. It simply is. He survived not because he conquered the desert, but because he endured its vast, silent apathy. He survived because, when everything was stripped away, he chose to take one more step. Follow Unforgotten Archives for more unforgettable survival stories.